Moving day had finally arrived, and James felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he parked his truck in front of his new house. The neighborhood seemed peaceful, lined with quaint houses and welcoming trees. He was hoping this fresh start would be exactly what he needed after the rough times he had faced. As he unpacked his belongings, he noticed a young girl standing across the street, watching him curiously. Her dark hair framed a pale face, and her eyes seemed to hold secrets. With a friendly smile, James waved at her, trying to ease the awkwardness of being the new guy in town. "Hi there. I'm James, just moved in next door," he called out. The girl returned the smile, stepping cautiously closer. "I'm Jenny. Nice to meet you, James. Are you going to be our new neighbor?" "That's right," James replied, relieved to have made a friendly acquaintance so quickly. "Are there many kids around here?" Jenny hesitated before answering, "Not really, just a few. But you'll like it here. It's a nice place." Over the next few days, James and Jenny crossed paths often. They would chat about their hobbies and the things they liked about the neighborhood. But as the days went by, James couldn't shake a growing unease about Jenny's behavior. She would sometimes disappear without explanation and return with an air of secrecy. One evening, while returning from a walk, James noticed strange symbols drawn on the walls of Jenny's house through the open window. They looked unfamiliar, almost like hieroglyphics. He shrugged it off, assuming it was some game or imaginary world she was creating for herself. Yet, the symbols lingered in his mind, leaving an unsettling impression. As darkness settled over the neighborhood, James heard eerie chanting noises coming from Jenny's house. Goosebumps spread across his skin as he tried to convince himself it was nothing more than kids playing a prank. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was lurking beneath the surface. The next day, James decided to visit Jenny's house to confront his concerns. He knocked on the door, and after what felt like an eternity, Jenny's mother answered. "Hello, Mrs. Miller. I hope I'm not intruding, but I was wondering if Jenny was home," James asked politely. Mrs. Miller seemed uneasy, glancing back into the house before answering, "I'm sorry, dear, but Jenny isn't feeling well today. Maybe you can come back another time." James nodded, not entirely convinced. "All right, I hope she feels better soon. Please tell her I stopped by." As he walked back to his house, a nagging feeling gnawed at him. There was more to Jenny's absence than just being sick, and the strange symbols and chanting only added to his suspicions. As James immersed himself in the enigmatic secrets of his new neighborhood, the disturbing pieces of the puzzle slowly fit together. One fateful evening, as he roamed the dimly lit aisles of the town's library, fate led him to an obscured corner housing ancient texts and forgotten folklore. Within these dusty tomes, cryptic references to a malevolent cult that had allegedly haunted the area for generations lurked. The more he unraveled the cryptic accounts, the more he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something sinister was at play in the town. His mind buzzed with thoughts of strange occurrences, secret gatherings in the heart of the woods, the unsettling friendliness of the townsfolk that concealed more than they revealed. Doubt gnawed at him as he pondered the possibility of an insidious underbelly concealed beneath the town's facade of normalcy. The more he read, the more he became convinced that the cult was real and still active. Determined to verify his suspicions, James kept a close eye on Jenny's actions and interactions. He noticed how she avoided certain topics and became evasive whenever he mentioned anything related to the town's history or its secrets. Jenny's behavior only fueled his concerns, and he knew he had to confront her about what he had discovered. One evening, James invited Jenny to join him at a nearby park, hoping to have an open and honest conversation away from prying eyes and ears. They sat on a bench under the dim glow of a street lamp, surrounded by the shadows of the looming trees. "Jenny, I've come across some strange things in this town," James started hesitantly, not wanting to frighten the young girl. Jenny glanced at him, her eyes guarded, but she nodded for him to continue. "I found references to a cult, a group that has been here for a long time, practicing dark rituals. They even talk about human sacrifices," James said, carefully choosing his words. Jenny's expression wavered, torn between trust and fear. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied softly, but her voice quivered with uncertainty. "Jenny, I want to help you. I can't ignore this. You're my friend, and I can see something's wrong," James implored, his concern evident in his voice. Her guard seemed to momentarily drop, and she glanced around as if afraid someone might be watching. "You don't understand. They are my family, and they've taken care of me since I was little. I can't just leave," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. James was torn between his desire to protect Jenny and the danger that lay ahead. He realized the cult had likely manipulated her emotions and manipulated her into believing they were her only family. Still, he couldn't give up on her. "I promise you, Jenny, I won't let anything happen to you. We can find a way out of this together. You don't have to be a part of this darkness," he said, reaching out to hold her hand in a gesture of reassurance. Her eyes searched his, torn between loyalty to the cult and the genuine concern in James's gaze. The weight of the decision hung heavily on her young shoulders. "I need time to think," she finally replied, her voice barely audible. James nodded, respecting her need for space. "Take all the time you need. But know that I'm here for you, no matter what." With their hearts heavy with the weight of the disturbing revelations, James and Jenny parted ways that night, each grappling with the choices that lay ahead. Little did they know that their confrontation had not gone unnoticed, and the cult's sinister eyes had turned their attention toward the intruders who dared to challenge their malevolent secrets. One moonless night, as the eerie silence enveloped the neighborhood, James prepared to venture into the heart of darkness. James was adept at situations like this. He had spent time in the Marines and knew how to look after himself. The dense forest loomed ominously around him, his senses alert for any sign of danger. The chilling atmosphere weighed heavily on his shoulders, but his determination and the promise of saving Jenny provided a glimmer of hope in the darkness. As he neared the cult's supposed meeting place, he proceeded with caution, avoiding the rustling leaves and snapping twigs that threatened to betray his presence. James's heart pounded in his chest, and he could feel the intensity of the moment building to a crescendo. Hiding behind a cluster of thick bushes, he peered through the underbrush, his eyes widening at the unsettling sight before him. The cult members, draped in dark robes and bearing sinister symbols, were gathered around an altar, preparing for a ritual that sent shivers down James's spine. His heart sank as he noticed Jenny standing among the cult members, her once bright eyes now glazed over with an unnatural devotion. Her innocence seemed to have been swallowed by the malevolent aura that surrounded her. As James concealed himself in the dense foliage, his heart sank as he witnessed Jenny's horrifying fate. She stood among a group of young girls, all lined up as offerings to some malevolent deity. The cult members performed their macabre ritual, cruelly binding the girls to the sinister altar and branding them with a searing red-hot poker, and then proceeded to cut the young girl's arm to drain her blood. The sickening sight of their innocence being violated was too much to bear. A shiver ran down James's spine as he watched the leader take a twisted sip of the young girl's blood, an act of unholy communion that sent a wave of revulsion through his soul. In that critical moment, James spotted an opportunity. Jenny stood at the back of the line, hidden from the cult's prying eyes fixated on their leader's gruesome act. Without hesitation, he sprang into action, bursting out of the bush, and seizing Jenny's hand, he swiftly pulled her away from the horror unfolding before them. Amid the chaos, they disappeared back into the safety of the bushes, James's determination and quick thinking having rescued Jenny from the clutches of the nightmarish cult. James ran through the dense forest, gripping Jenny's hand tightly as they sought refuge from the pursuing cult members. Gasping for breath, they finally came to a halt, finding a momentary respite amidst the towering trees. James tried to reassure Jenny, promising her that he would ensure her escape from this nightmare. Gradually, Jenny's panicked breathing subsided as James comforted her with his words. However, their brief moment of peace was shattered by the distant sounds of the cult members closing in on them. Time was running out, and James knew he had to act swiftly to ensure their survival. "Jenny," James whispered urgently, "you need to find a hiding spot and stay quiet. I'll lead them away, but you must stay hidden until it's safe." Jenny's eyes widened in fear, her voice trembling as she asked, "What are you going to do?" James gave her a reassuring smile, his eyes filled with determination. "I've got some hunting to do," he replied cryptically, his marine training kicking into gear. Drawing on the expertise he had honed during his time in the Marines, James transformed into a shadowy figure within the forest. He navigated the dense foliage with a ghostly silence, orchestrating a skillful dance that led the cult members on a frenzied pursuit through the labyrinth of trees and shadows. The terrain became his ally as he employed cunning tactics, setting traps that ensnared the cult members or ambushing them with startling precision, swiftly neutralizing their presence. With every maneuver, James embodied a phantom of the forest, a force that struck fear into the hearts of those who dared to hunt him. As the night wore on, James's plan bore fruit. He managed to separate the cult members, thinning their numbers and buying precious time for Jenny to remain hidden. The forest became his ally, concealing him in its darkness and aiding his escape from perilous situations. James sprinted back to the hiding spot where he had left Jenny, but to his surprise, she was nowhere to be found. His heart raced as he scanned the surroundings, and just as he began to worry, Jenny emerged from the shadows of the trees. She hurried over to James, her eyes filled with determination, and assured him she knew a safe place they could go. Without hesitation, Jenny led the way, and James followed closely behind her. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a clearing where an ancient, dilapidated church stood, shrouded in mystery. The sight of the church amidst the wilderness raised James's suspicions, making him question its presence in such a secluded location. "What is a church doing out here in the forest?" James questioned, his voice tinged with curiosity and skepticism. Undeterred, Jenny approached the church's weathered door, urging James to follow her inside. As they stepped into the dimly lit interior, an eerie feeling washed over James. Before he could fully grasp the situation, the door behind them slammed shut, leaving them in near darkness, and a sense of foreboding settled in the air. As James and Jenny stood in the suffocating darkness of the church, suddenly, the entire place illuminated with an eerie glow of candlelight. Only then did James realize the trap he had unwittingly fallen into, cunningly laid by Jenny herself. The church's interior was surrounded by cult members, cloaked in black, holding candles that cast flickering shadows across their faces. At the forefront stood the ominous altar, and the leader's menacing gaze was fixed upon James. Before he could react, James was seized by the cult members and forcibly brought to the front. Panic surged through him as they nailed his hands and feet to a cross, echoing a nightmarish crucifixion. His cries for help fell upon deaf ears, including Jenny's, who stared at him with an unsettling, malevolent look he had never seen before. As James trembled in terror, the cult leader loomed before him, offering an unthinkable choice. "You can die like a dog right here, right now, or you can join us and embrace a life of fulfillment," the leader taunted. The gravity of the situation engulfed James. He felt trapped, torn between preserving his life and embracing the darkness that surrounded him. His mind raced, grappling with the impossible decision before him. "What am I going to do?" he thought, paralyzed by the weight of the choice that would determine his fate.